Hey everyone, this is Mary Ann Pizzatola. I'm president of the New York City Organization of Public Service Retirees. And today I'm sitting with Evelyn Jones-Rich, and I am so excited to introduce you to Evelyn. She is a wealth of knowledge and history of all the things that we have been talking about our history in labor and healthcare. And so I'm so excited. I'm not even gonna talk more. I'm just gonna say, Evelyn, welcome, and thank you for meeting with us today.
Well, you're very welcome. I'm here as an individual, but I'm a retiree of 30 years from the City University of New York. I'm a member of the PSC, the Professional Staff Congress, and I'm active in two committees, which PSC has the Social Safety Net Committee and the Social Safety Net Task Force. I'm also the executive director of the New York City chapter of Americans for Democratic Action. And I've been a member of ADA for 70 years, which again means I'm giving away my age, but retirees are older.
Yes, we are.
Now, let me just say to you that I've been an activist all my life. And I think in this context, people should know that much of my activity stems from my mother, watching her. She was a community activist, a little old lady like me, always standing up for what she thought was right. And so she was a role model. And my activism began when I was in college. I went to Bryn Mawr College in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. I was the first African-American student to live on the campus of that school for 4 years, all right? And after Bryn Mawr, I worked in Washington as a lobbyist for Americans for Democratic Action. And I came to New York with my husband, and we've been here for 65 years. Unfortunately, my husband passed away, but he was an activist too. And when we were in Washington in 1955, President Eisenhower issued this executive order desegregating public facilities in Washington. And so we went to work. And we picketed and counseled all kinds of public institutions, including theaters, movies, swimming pools, bowling alleys, you name it, we picketed. And so I have the experience of 60 years of activism, which I bring to this issue. The issue that we're going to talk about today, which in my view is the issue of our times.
Yes.
Okay. Now, over my lifetime, I've been, some people would say a troublemaker, but John Lewis would call me a good troublemaker because he was one of our original freedom riders, which means that I was active in the sit-ins, the freedom rides, and then subsequently in events in the labor movement throughout. I also need to tell you and our audience that my contacts with the labor movement go back 65 years through Americans for Democratic Action, which means that I knew and interacted with the leading labor unions of the day. All right, so I'm talking about people like Jerry Worth, AFSCME, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. I'm talking about the steel workers. I'm talking about the mine workers. I'm talking about, the ILGWU, which is my favorite, the International Ladies Garment Workers Union, because of all the unions in the 60s, they were the union which stepped up first and continuously to provide not only funds for the sit-ins and the freedom rides, but also bodies. familiar with 1199 and Leon Davis, the hospital workers, a whole host of union leaders I have known and interacted with through my life. So that when we come to today and we look at the union leaders of today, I am in the position to compare them through experience with the union leaders throughout, my lifetime. And I'm not ashamed of my life. I realize I'm in the, what do they call it? The winter of my life, if you talk about seasons. But I'm going to go out with my boots on.
There you go, girl. I love that. Yes, because we are literally in the fight for our life and our health care. We've never really been in a situation, and this generation has seen that, and they're not understanding what our problems are. They don't understand why we're pushing back on this. This is concerning to all of us. We have retirees in their 70s, 80s, 90s that they're very concerned with today's union's actions, and they don't understand. One of the common sayings is that they've lost their way or they've lost their compass. And we had this conversation before, right?
Well, I want to say to you that not only is this the issue of our day, but it involves the whole spectrum of people living not only in New York City, but in New York State and beyond. So the things we do have a ripple effect. And our army may be small now, but as we organize and reach out, it's going to grow astronomically. We're talking not only about retirees. This is not simply a retiree issue.
No.
That's an important point to make.
Yes.
It involves the people on the cusp of retirement. We involve people who will be retired. It involves their dependents. It involves all the people who need access to quality, comprehensive, affordable, universal health care. All right. And so we're in the front of that fight now because the unions, in my view, are not doing the job that they should be doing.
No, they don't understand. Well, even in the basic argument of traditional Medicare versus Medicare Advantage, they just thought that they were selling off a benefit for a financial savings to benefit their own collective bargaining process. They really had no knowledge from what we're seeing, how this would impact a current retiree, and that this was a pure give back for a future retiree. And when we spoke to some young people in the garages or in some of these New York City agencies, they were typically in their late 20s. And we would say to them, do you realize what you've done? Do you realize what you're still trying to do by negotiate away a traditional Medicare and force people into the Medicare Advantage? Their whole argument was, well, everyone, the MLC keeps saying that the stabilization fund is going dry and we have to do something to save money. I said, but this is a benefit that would help protect you, whether you became disabled or retired and became of age. This would have been your health plan, and you need to understand how it is fundamentally different than what you're trying to put us into, and how it will harm some people. And he said, look, lady, if I have to, I'm in my 20s, late 20s, I have to be here another 40 years. If I have to get rid of that old people's insurance, do you really think that I'm going to be here for another 40 years? I'll sell that old people's insurance and I'll just use it for my next raise. I could use money in my paycheck. I'm not going to be here to collect that. And I said, and what happens if tomorrow you get hurt on or off the job and become disabled from doing your job? What are you going to have? You just sold off your health insurance. They're not even looking at it that way. They're just looking at it as old people's insurance, not that it takes care of people who are disabled and under 65 or those are 65 and over. They're not even understanding that the plans are different than what they're trying to push us into, because they're used to their unions today increasing copays, putting in more prior authorizations. And they think that's normal. That's not normal. When the unions say, hey, we had no givebacks, that's another mistruth, because they're giving givebacks on these healthcare plans every time they do another health agreement for healthcare savings.
You are raising a lot of issues here. And perhaps the main point I need to make is that we are educators. And what
Yes.
you just said illustrates the need for us to educate,
Educate.
particularly this young group. Now, let me first just say a few words about the difference between Medicare and Medicare Advantage programs.
Okay.
Medicare is public health, financed by the city and the state, well, the federal government, paid for by our taxes. Medicare Advantage, and now 46% of seniors are in Medicare Advantage programs, is private medical care. And it represents a growing effort on the part of a whole lot of conservatives, mainly Republicans, but sometimes others, to privatize our health care. And in doing so, they take away the advantages that we need as seniors and retirees.
Right.
I call it Medicare disadvantage because that's exactly what it is. And to just make a long story short there, it limits access to health care. It limits our ability to go to a doctor. It limits our ability to find specialists. It limits our ability to get the technical support, meaning radiation. Those kinds of treatments, you have to ask for permission. They cost money, and the bottom line is money.
Right.
That's very important. That's the name of the game. Now, I just want briefly to draw an analogy between the young people who are saying that their tax money is supporting retirees. It's true. Some of their tax money is supporting retirees. My tax money is supporting the loans that Biden just forgave, $10,000 for families making less than $125,000 a year, and $20,000 for families, low-income families. Now, I think education is the key. It's very important. You don't necessarily have to have a college degree, but most of us need some kind of further training. I welcome Biden's initiative in responding to meeting the $1 trillion plus that student loans represent in our government. However, I support it because they are as much a part of this country as are we. And the minute we understand that we are all in this fight together, and that it is the role of government to help, support, encourage, enhance the individual, we will benefit so that universal health care is good for everybody, not simply for seniors. It's good for all of us. And we have to understand and appreciate that.
Well, what do you think about in our personal situation where we have the unions that are willing to, the Municipal Labor Council purposely negotiated away our right to traditional Medicare and our Medigap to force us into these MA plans solely for the savings to use towards collective bargaining, their collective bargaining?
Well, let's talk a little bit about the Municipal Labor Committee. It was formed somewhere in the 1960s, okay? And it was an effort on the part of the government, city government, to bring together the unions with whom or with which it was going to negotiate health care, all right? There are about 109 unions in the Municipal Labor Committee. And when one observes its operation, from my point, it represents the concept of might over right, because 3 or 4 union leaders make most of the decisions which impact negatively on the poor little old ladies like me. Now, this is Harry Nespoli with the Sanitation Workers Union, okay? Yep. This is Gregory Floyd with the Teamsters Union, okay? This is, well, let's see, Mike Mulgrew with the UFT. And I'm thinking about the other major union here. Oh, DC 37. We're talking about DC 37 is really an amalgam of AFSCME, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. He represents the largest union in the Municipal Labor Committee, and he has maybe 135,000 members, most of whom work in menial jobs in city government.
Yep.
The retirees, the average pension of a retiree in that union is about $18,000. Okay. Many of these are single households led by women. Many of these women are what we call the sandwich generation. I don't know if you ever heard of that. They're taking care of their grandchildren because their children, for some reason or other, are unable to provide the support and nurture that families need. And this is a man who has written off 265,000 retirees. And when questioned about it, he says, well, I have to do what I have to do. You do not have to do what you have to do. You have to do right. Okay. And I'm looking forward to the day when I can meet Mr. Girardi. But I just want to tell you, I did a little research and I have a little paper here. I'm going to see if I can find it because I want to talk about their salary. These union leaders and their salaries, I mean, they're unbelievable. All right. Against the background of these little old ladies, I'm rustling through my papers and I'm not finding them, but I have a good memory despite my age. Okay, here, Mr. Nespoli makes $214,941 a year. Okay, Mr. Gerardo makes $315,381 a year. Mr. Floyd, let's see, I have to add it together. He gets $89,159 from his Teamster salary and $167,528 because he's on the board of Evelyn. Evelyn is one of the healthcare companies that monitors and provides our healthcare. Okay, and they're talking about taking away our access to free premiums promised us by the city when we enrolled, taking lower salaries and less take-home pay. It is unconscionable and juxtaposed against the background of somebody like, let me go to a private union. They're a private union. Walter Reuther, whom I knew. Now, he died in like 2007. He was a young man. But they had a convention. He was the president of the auto workers. And in 1959, at the UAW convention in Atlantic City, they raised his salary. They gave him a $2,000 increase. So his salary went to $10,000 from, it really went to $10,000 from $9,000 because he refused $1,000 of the $2,000. And I just looked it up because in 1959, he was making $22,000 a year when the Ford, the man who was in charge of the company, was making $445,000. Now, I tell you this to say that union leaders that I know of and with whom I've interacted in my lifetime have an allegiance to the members. They see their responsibility, and it's not to make big salaries far out of proportion to what their members get. It's to serve, okay? And we'll talk about serving because in back of this whole, well, I call it a mishigas, back of this whole movement is this lack of vision on the part of many of the leaders in the municipal unions in New York City today. They have lost their way. They have lost the vision of what a labor union is supposed to be and to do. And hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about what is it that they're supposed to be and to do.
What are they supposed to do?
All right. Okay.
They are supposed to represent us. And lately, I think one of the common lines is we're seeing is they're more concerned with themselves than they are with those they're supposed to represent.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, if you read the literature right now, there's a dissident movement within the Teamsters Union, Freud's union. There's a group that's running against him because they say that they're not, the union leaders are not doing their job. And I'm hopeful that they will change their minds.
I'm hoping that too, because I've seen that even in the UFT with Michael Mulgrew, who makes a lot of money. I think Michael Mulgrew's salaries and compensation, it was about almost $500,000 with everything. And he would get two pensions. He gets a pension from the city and a pension from the union. So you're looking at a man like this who it was because of his contract in 2014 that put us in the situation that we're in, that these negotiations, while taking the money out of the stabilization fund for the 2014 UFT MOU, benefited the teachers. It was every city retiree and employee that ended up paying it back because of him.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the MLC agreement.
Okay.
With the city in 2014. And I wanted to say this earlier. These are complicated issues. I don't begin to understand the nuances of all of them, but I do understand that this is something that really impacts on all of us.
Yeah.
They agreed that MLC agreed with the city, de Blasio was then the mayor, that they were going to save money. They wanted to save money so that they could expand the benefits of the in-service people. And they were going to save billions of dollars. Now, they had a way of saving this money. And they started out not so badly by decreasing the amount of money that they paid to Anthem and Evelyn. Now, our listeners may not know what that is. The city has two major health programs, HIP, the health insurance plan, and GHI. My union, the PSC, we get benefits via GHI. And we have a program called Senior Care. They made a deal. When I say they, the Municipal Labor Committee made a deal with the city, for example, and a few years later, that all the new enrollees would come into HIP because that HIP program was cheaper than GHI. Now we're talking about saving money. And so what the city decided to do, I don't know that people know this, but the city pays Evelyn and Anthem, these two companies that joined into the alliance that was going to ultimately move us into Medicare Advantage Plus. The city made a deal primarily with these companies that they would pay them less. Fine, not off the backs of retirees. However, the city didn't get as much money as they saved, as much money as they thought they would save. Now, when you talk about saving, I want you to understand that saving means taking money from retirees. That's what it means, reducing costs. So they renewed this agreement in 2018, and they met with the OLC, that's the Office of Labor Relations, that represents the city. And this gentleman whose name is Lynn, Linn, that's his last name. He
Robert.
testified before the city council. And he said, he says, we have a plan. We're going to save money. And this is how we're going to save it. We're going to get the retirees to use the emergency room less. Okay. We're going to ask them to use the urgent care centers less. We're going to reduce visits to the specialists, all right? We're going to decrease contacts with the physical therapists. We're going to reduce the radiologists. We're going to really bring the prices down. Now, around the same time, they negotiated an agreement with the UFT to give raises to the teachers. The UFT is the second largest, I would say, member of the MLC. The DC 37 is first, and I would say the UFT is second. The Teamsters are really last. But anyway, they paid out of the Joint Stabilization Fund, a fund which was created for the city to put in money that it was saving by, for example, putting the new recruits into HIP. They took money out of that fund, which had more than $1 billion, and they used that money to pay the increases for the teachers. Okay. Now, this is my position. My position is that that was not the right thing to do. What they needed to do was to raise taxes. And austerity is an important word in this context. The city and the unions work with each other. And the notion of saving money means taking it off the backs of the retirees. And so what they did is they decided to move us, meaning the retirees, from traditional public Medicare into a Medicare Advantage program. Now, we don't know how many people that there's a term for this, covered lives. Every time you insure somebody, they're a covered life. We don't know how many covered lives the city promised the people running this Medicare Advantage Plus program. They thought that they would get. But the point is, we as retirees decided to fight back, okay? And in our own little communities, in our own little way, led by your organization, the New York Organization of Municipal Retirees, we decided to stand up and fight. Now, there's a famous Black liberator, Frederick Douglass, and he said, power never concedes anything without a fight. It never has, and it never will. And what we did with your leadership is we stood up to the MLC.
We did.
Went to our unions and we said, now, wait a minute. The city is not going to save, they were going to save $600 million a year. All right. Another important point is that $600 million a year is 0.6% of 1% of the New York City budget. 0.6% of 1% of the New York City budget, and they're going to put us in a Medicare, so-called Medicare Advantage program, where we will be denied access to free, universal, comprehensive health care. Well, look, I'm a little old lady. I'm 89 years old, and I'm not going to take it. I'm not going to take it. So we sent the word out, opt out, because the city gave us, those of us in senior care, the opportunity to say, no, we want to stay in traditional public Medicare. And they were shocked. Now, I do not have a telephone line into the mayor's office, but I'm sure he was shocked because they admitted, the mayor's office admitted in April of 2022 that 66,000 retirees had opted out. Now, this is August of 2022. So we don't know how
Well,
many
the city
retirees.
the
All
city
right.
stopped collecting them in July. They're no longer accepting them. And then when Anthem did pull out of the deal, they shut down the line altogether. So there is nothing to opt out of. But right now we know that the unions did announce that they are seeking negotiations with Aetna to go back and do the same thing all over again.
All right. Now, a big problem, as I said, these are complicated issues, is that they may be negotiating healthcare programs without us.
Yes, they are.
We are overlooked, shunted aside for all kinds of reasons. And this is what I mean when I say the union leaders have no vision, because when Walter Reuther founded the UAW, the United Automobile Workers, and we have a whole host of private unions in the city which are doing a good job. I mean, I could tell you DC 37, 1199, the hotel and restaurant employees. When these things happen, the union leaders had a vision. They said, now what is it that we're faced with? And what are we going to do? The first thing they need to do is to recognize that retirees are constituents. We are equal constituents, and it's about time that any negotiations that they enter into include retirees. Now, they'll say, well, they don't have to. Well, they can. Yes, we can. Was that Obama's slogan? Yes, they can. But look, I told you what our numbers are. Our numbers are very large, and we are the major constituency, and we are on the road to organizing ourselves. And the city has to understand that seniors may be retired, but we're not tired, okay? We are ready for this fight. It has just started, and we are going to bring all of our experience, resources, creativity to this struggle, because it's an important one, not only for us, but for our children, our children's children, and beyond.
Yes, it is. It's a very important factor. The UFT and the MLC will actually say, well, we had retirees involved. The UFT, we created, this is what Michael Mulgrew will tell you. I created the UFT Healthcare Committee. We have a whole bunch of retirees on that committee, but they're union loyalists. They're not exploring both sides of the issue. They're only taking the union line and running with it. They supported the MA plan the entire way without ever having a conversation with what would be the pros and cons of this plan for everybody.
Well, I agree with you, because when the MLC started exploring options, it had 8 special ideas to explore about how to solve this problem. And they didn't look at them. They looked at the movement to the Medicare Advantage program.
Because it was easy and fast.
And I know that there were others,
yes.
A whole lot of others.
Yes.
Now, the MLC has 3 committees. One is called the Technical Committee. They created a committee called the Tripartite Health Committee. Okay, and that's the committee charged with finding the answers to all of these questions.
Right.
The chair of the health committee is the former chair of the UFT's welfare fund. Okay, what I am trying to say to you is that, again, in a different way, these leaders have no vision. They're looking at the same issues, but never bringing new ideas That's what we're good for. I'm an educator. I was an educator for 30 years before I retired. I'm an agitator, and I'm also committed to defending these little old ladies. Now, I want to say one more thing before we finish. A major reason why I'm in this fight is because of racism. Now, it's not right out in the open, it's hidden. And beneath all of that, there is rampant evidence of racism. I just want to begin by saying that the reason why we pay 20% of the Medicare costs, with the government picking up the other 80%, is because whenever President Johnson in 1965 was able to get the Medicare and Medicaid bills passed, those Southern conservative legislators did not want to provide health care to people of color. So throughout our lives, we have been subjected to inferior health care. It is now among the seniors here in New York City. I can tell you we have 1.1 million seniors. Not all of them are retirees, of course. Some of them are working. 46% of them are white. That means 54% of them are people of color. Throughout all of these negotiations, there is kind of an elephant in the room. And that elephant is the people of color who through our whole lifetimes have been treated like second-class citizens in every way. Now, I'm not here to make a big speech, but I just want to say we're not taking it anymore, okay? We are part of this country and this struggle, okay? And my arm goes out to you. My hand goes out to you for leading this struggle. And you should know that you're not alone. That, I know you need money. And I hope that the people who are looking at this realize that this struggle needs not only volunteers, it needs dollars. It needs your little dollars. And if you just opened up your purse and your pocket and gave a check to the New York organization, and I know you're upset, but I'm going to say it. The time has come for us to put our money where our resistance and our mouth is. And lawyers cost money. And the legal problems have turned into a different direction. I don't know if you want to talk about that now, because I don't know how much money you have left, time you have left. But a promise is a promise. And we need to put all of our resources behind forcing the city to honor that promise. Because in the long run, this city is a great city because of its people, because of old people like me and all the hundreds of thousands out there who in our small ways have made this city great, okay? And it is not acceptable for the city to turn its back on us now and say, it's not in the contract. We're not giving you free health care. It's not free. We work for it. The whole time we were in the city working, we worked for it. We paid for it, and we're entitled to it.
Yes. Yes. And that's trying to explain that to people is it's not free. It might not cost us a premium today, but we did pay for it by lower wages, by giving give backs, by not taking, we took 0 zeros under Giuliani. We took another 0 under Dinkins. We delayed our increases from being implemented for 6 to 12 months in order to give the city a further savings. All those things we remember because that's what we negotiated. Today, this generation has no idea what the history was. They just say, oh, you got free healthcare. It was even the union that put out an email, the DEA, basically guilting us for having free healthcare or premium free healthcare. Like, you shouldn't be having this. Seriously? Well, maybe you should grandfather us for what we gave up, and you should go forward negotiating for you. because you clearly don't know the history of how we got here and why we have what we have. I tried to explain to some of them, and this is even on some of the city council, that they don't understand some of this, in that the city council legislated 12-126 of the administrative code in 1967 when Medicare came, after Medicare came online in 1966, to be able to give Medicare to employees, and legislated it for retirees. The employee benefit was provided by personnel order. The retirees was legislated by the city council. And I found records that going back to 1977, at the time, Hugh Carey was president and Mayor Beam was our mayor, tried to take away Medicare B reimbursement out of 12-126 because the city had no money. And it was to the thanks of Mary Pinkett from Brooklyn, who was also the first African-American female on the city council, as well as Eileen Ryan, who was another very strong woman from the Bronx, who helped make sure that the mayor didn't take away Medicare B. And it ended up that they told DC 37, you know, if you are going to help come out of this, there were a few things. The UFT and DC 37 actually helped the city come out of that crisis. Al Shanker helped with the money to the city from the pension fund to help save the city. And DC 37 gave $26 million to the city for Medicare B reimbursement, as to not harm the retirees. This is what the union should be doing today, protecting a retiree benefit, because they will once be in our shoes. And for Harry Nispoli and some of these actives to say, well, why would I want to hire them? We're a retiree in training. That's just lip service. They want to tell you what you want to hear, but their actions aren't following through, because if they were, they wouldn't be looking to harm a retired person.
Well, you've made a wonderful point.
Yeah.
We have given to the city in so many ways, and now it's up to the city to recognize
Yes.
our efforts, our really good efforts. And I think your brief history of medical insurance since Medicare is important for people to know.
Yes.
And now, you know, we're at a crossroads, and we're asking these union leaders, we're telling them, as a matter of fact, that guys, it's time for you to lead.
Yes.
And you have to lead with vision, all right? And you have to stop looking for excuses for not to honor promises which were legitimate then and which are legitimate now. So let's move forward. So listen, Henry Garrido, Greg Floyd, Henry Nispoli, call Marianne Pizzatola and welcome her to your circle, all right? Because we believe, those of us out there in the trenches, that you don't really speak for your members, and that they will recognize it sooner, if not later.
Amen. So before we wrap this up, is there anything you would like to add?
Well, what I want to say in conclusion is that my sources tell me that, with reference to the litigation, that the city is doing some things which concern me.
Yes.
That the city, and I'm sure you know this better than I, because I think that Mr. Cohen has done a pretty good job of representing us.
Yep. And
although we need the money to keep on paying him. When the city says that a promise is not a promise because it's not in the contract, I reject that. The administrative code is a legal document that binds the city, and that promise is codified there. In addition, there are a number of employees for the city who were never members of unions.
correct.
And who are benefiting from these retirement policies, and for the city to throw all those people under the bus because they are not a member of a union and therefore not able to have been, all of this is in the past tense and what I call the subjunctive. The city is now looking for a way out. You know what? In my work in ADA, I knew a lot of members of Congress. There was a member of Congress whose name is Don Fraser, who was the mayor of Minneapolis, and then he was a representative. And Don used to say to us, when in doubt, do the right thing. So I'm saying to the city, look, do the right thing. Back away from all of this. You have an opportunity now to bring together these disparate groups. I'm saying to the unions, look, it's time for you to recognize the important role of retirees in the union structure. So revise the union structure. Let's look at things creatively. Let's move forward together, recognizing that to keep this city the greatest city in the world, you're going to have the support of, you have to have the support of the governed. And right now, you're in big trouble, guys, because you have an army of retirees who are against you and who are standing up for right and justice.
There you go. Great final words. Do the right thing. I think that's going to be our new slogan.
All right.
Absolutely. Well,
thank you so much for having me. I
Yeah.
enjoyed talking to you. And remember, there are a lot of little old ladies out there like me, you know, I have a whole building full, you know, and we are ready.
We're coming to talk to you. We will. I'm going to pause this here. Thank you very much for speaking with us today. I'm sure this will be the first of several calls that we'll do together. Thank you, Evelyn.
You're very welcome.